A millionaire fights to keep custody of his children after losing his wife under suspicious circumstances. Pressured by ambitious relatives, he hires a stranger to meet a legal requirement. But the woman ends up uncovering dangerous secrets that put everyone at risk. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Stay tuned. The autumn leaves swirled around Wonder Manor like whispers of a past that refused to be silenced. Ethan Bally stood at the bay window of his study, his reflection ghostly against the glass. At 42, his once vibrant features had hardened into angles of grief and determination. 6 months had passed since Elizabeth's accident at the cliffs, but the hollow ache in his chest remained as fresh as the morning they had pulled her car from the rocky shores of Lake Michigan. "Mr. Bally?" The soft voice of Mrs. Peterson. The housekeeper broke through his thoughts. "Mr. Harris is here to see you. He says it's urgent." Ethan nodded without turning. James Harris had been his attorney for 15 years, but lately his visits only heralded more complications, more threats to the fragile peace Ethan had struggled to maintain. "Send him in, and please check on the children," he said, his voice steady despite the tension coiling inside him. The door opened moments later, and James entered, his leather briefcase clutched tightly in one hand. The lines around his eyes told Ethan everything before a single word was spoken. "They've filed the motion, haven't they?" Ethan asked, finally turning from the window. James nodded grimly. "Elizabeth's parents are pushing hard for custody of the triplets. They've found a clause in her grandfather's will. It's obscure but potentially binding. It stipulates that any minor heirs to the Wonder fortune must be raised in a two-parent household to maintain their inheritance rights." "That's absurd," Ethan snapped, his composure cracking. "Elizabeth never mentioned such a thing." "Because she probably didn't know. This was buried in family trust documents from 3 generations ago." James placed his briefcase on the mahogany desk and withdrew a yellow document. "But Judge Carroll is old-fashioned. She's giving their claim serious consideration." The weight of this new threat settled on Ethan's shoulders. After everything he'd endured, the suspicious glances from the investigators, the whispers in town about Elizabeth's accident, the struggle to comfort 3 traumatized 5-year-olds while battling his own grief, now this. The Westbrooks had never approved of him, viewing him as an outsider who had married into their wealthy Michigan dynasty. Now they saw their chance to seize not only the children, but the considerable trust fund that came with them. "What are our options?" Ethan asked, his mind already racing through possibilities, each more desperate than the last. James hesitated, then spoke carefully. "There's a hearing in 2 weeks. Judge Carroll has ordered a home evaluation, including an assessment of the children's emotional well-being. But here's the complication. She specifically wants to see how they interact with maternal figures." "They're suggesting I can't raise them alone," Ethan said, bitterness creeping into his voice. "Not exactly. But they're leveraging the clause to argue that the children need a mother figure. The Westbrooks have made it clear that Robert's new wife is willing to step in." James paused. "You know how influential the Westbrooks are in Harbor Springs. Half the town depends on their businesses." Ethan's jaw tightened. Robert Wonder, Elizabeth's brother, had remarried barely 3 months after his sister's accident. The timing had been tasteless, the new wife a young socialite from Chicago who had never even met the triplets. "What do you suggest?" Ethan asked, though he dreaded the answer. "We need to demonstrate that the children have a stable maternal presence in their lives before the hearing. It doesn't have to be permanent, just convincing enough for the evaluation." The implication hung in the air between them. Find a woman, any woman, to play the role of surrogate mother, or risk losing everything. "I won't parade strangers through to their lives. They've been through enough," Ethan said firmly. James nodded, understanding the impossible position his client faced. "Just think about it. We don't have many other options." After James left, Ethan climbed the stairs to the children's floor. The west wing of Wonder Manor had been transformed after the triplets were born. What was once a formal guest area now held 3 adjoining bedrooms, a playroom filled with books and toys, and a small art studio where the children could express. feelings they couldn't yet verbalize. He found them in the playroom, supervised by Mrs. Peterson. Mason sat in the corner with a puzzle, his methodical approach, reflecting his need for order in a world that had become chaotic. Lily was curled in a window seat with a picture book, occasionally glancing outside as if expecting someone. And Alexander, always the most sensitive of the three, was huddled, with his stuffed bear, watching his siblings with worried eyes. Though identical in appearance with their mother's auburn hair and Ethan's blue eyes, their personalities had diverged dramatically since Elizabeth's accident. Mason had become rigid and controlling, Lily withdrawn and watchful, Alexander anxious and clingy. The child psychologist had explained that each was processing trauma in their own way, but all Ethan saw was three children drowning in grief while he struggled to keep his own head above water. "Daddy." Alexander spotted him first, rushing across the room to wrap small arms around Ethan's legs. "Are you staying to play?" "For a little while," Ethan promised, lifting him up. Mason and Lily approached more cautiously, their expressions both hopeful and guarded. These moments broke his heart, their hunger for his presence, their fear of his absence. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Ethan sat in his study staring at a photograph of Elizabeth. Her smile, once his anchor, now seemed to hold secrets he couldn't decipher. The night of her accident, they had argued. She had been distant for weeks, taking late-night calls, disappearing for hours without explanation. When confronted, she had promised to explain everything the next day. That explanation never came. The harsh ring of his cell phone startled him. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Bally?" The voice on the other end was female, hesitant. "My name is Olivia Reed. I was given your number by Sarah at Harbor Springs Hospital. She said you might be looking for temporary help with your children." Ethan frowned. Sarah was his sister-in-law's cousin, a pediatric nurse who had sometimes cared for the triplets. He hadn't reached out to her about his current dilemma. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he began. "Oh." Disappointment filled the single syllable. "I'm sorry to bother you. It's just that Sarah mentioned you needed someone discreet, someone who could step in quickly. And she hesitated. "I need the work, desperately." Something in her voice, vulnerability mixed with determination, made Ethan pause. "What kind of work were you expecting?" he asked carefully. She wasn't specific, just that it was temporary, well-paid, and involved children. "I have experience. I raised my daughter alone, and I've worked in childcare for years." Ethan's mind raced. Perhaps this wasn't coincidence, but opportunity. A woman who needed money, who had childcare experience, who came through a connection he could verify. "Ms. Reed, I may have a proposition for you after all, but it's unconventional. Would you be willing to meet tomorrow to discuss it?" There was a brief silence before she responded. "Mr. Bally, at this point in my life, unconventional doesn't scare me. Name the time and place." As Ethan hung up, he felt the first flicker of hope in months. He had no idea who Olivia Reed was or why fate had connected them tonight, but something told him this stranger might be his family's only chance. What he couldn't know was that Olivia Reed had secrets of her own, secrets that would soon intertwine with the shadowy truths lurking within Wonder Manor, threatening to unravel everything he had fought to protect. Olivia Reed gripped the steering wheel of her aging Honda as she navigated the winding coastal road leading to Wonder Manor. The morning mist rolling off Lake Michigan shrouded the towering pines, giving the journey an eerie quality that matched her unease. At 35, Olivia had learned to trust her instincts, and everything about this situation felt wrong. Yet here she was, driving toward a stranger's mansion out of sheer desperation. The text message from Mr. Bally had been specific. "Meet at 10 a.m., come alone, tell no one." Under normal circumstances, she would have declined immediately. But Normal had abandoned her life 3 weeks ago when her mother collapsed and was diagnosed with a rare heart condition requiring experimental treatment. Treatment their insurance wouldn't cover. $70,000. The number haunted her waking hours and chased her through fitful sleep. As a single mother working as a preschool teacher in Detroit, Such a sum might as well have been 70 million. She'd already maxed out her credit cards, taken a second mortgage on her small house, and even sold her grandmother's jewelry. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough. When Sarah, an old college roommate now working at Harbor Springs Hospital, had cryptically mentioned a wealthy widower willing to pay handsomely for discreet assistance, Olivia had swallowed her pride and made the call. The iron gates of wonder. Manor loomed ahead, ornate and imposing. Olivia punched in the code she'd been given and watched them swing open with a reluctant groan. The driveway wound through manicured grounds before revealing the manor itself, a sprawling stone residence overlooking the lake, its windows reflecting the morning light like watchful eyes. A slender woman with silver-streaked hair waited on the front steps. "Miss Reed?" The woman's posture was rigid, her expression carefully neutral. "I'm Mrs. Peterson, the housekeeper. Mr. Bally is waiting in the study. Please follow me." The interior of Wonder Manor was as impressive as its facade. High ceilings, polished, hardwood floors, artwork that Olivia suspected cost more than her entire house. Yet despite its grandeur, the place felt hollow, as if grief had seeped into the very walls. Mrs. Peterson led her through a maze of corridors, finally stopping before an intricately carved door. "In here," she said, then added in a lower voice, "Whatever he's offering, consider carefully before accepting. This house holds more shadows than light these days." Before Olivia could question this cryptic warning, the door opened to reveal Ethan Bally. The man's appearance startled her. From Sarah's description of a powerful businessman, she had expected someone older, perhaps portly and intimidating. Instead, she faced a man roughly her age, tall and lean, with eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and shoulders that carried an invisible weight. "Ms. Reed," he extended his hand, "thank you for coming." His grip was firm, his gaze direct as he assessed her. Olivia felt herself being measured, evaluated. She lifted her chin slightly, refusing to be intimidated despite the flutter of anxiety in her chest. The study reflected its owner, elegant but functional, with wall-to-wall bookshelves and a massive desk positioned to overlook the lake. Photographs dotted the surfaces, most featuring 3 identical children with bright smiles and curious eyes. "Please sit." Ethan gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. "I imagine you're wondering why you're here." Sarah was vague, Olivia admitted, settling into the chair. She mentioned childcare, but something temporary and unusual. Ethan nodded, his expression guarded. "What I'm about to propose is unorthodox. Before I explain, I need your absolute discretion, regardless of whether you accept." Olivia hesitated, then nodded. "I understand. I have 3 children, triplets, Mason, Lily, and Alexander. They're 5 years old." His voice softened at their names. "6 months ago, their mother, my wife Elizabeth, was lost in an accident at the lake cliffs. Since then, her parents have been attempting to gain custody." "I'm sorry for your loss," Olivia said quietly. "They've uncovered an obscure clause in a family trust that requires a 2-parent household for the children to retain their inheritance rights. The court has ordered an evaluation, and the judge is particularly interested in the children's interaction with a maternal figure." His jaw tightened. "The Westbrooks, my in-laws, are powerful in this region. They've never approved of me, and they see this as their opportunity." Understanding dawned on Olivia. "You need someone to pretend to be involved with your family." "Yes." Relief flickered across his features at her quick comprehension. "Just for the evaluation. A few weeks at most. It would require moving in temporarily, learning enough about our family to be convincing, and connecting with the children sufficiently to satisfy the court-appointed evaluator." Olivia's mind raced. The proposal was outrageous, essentially asking her to participate in deceiving the court, yet the desperation in the man's eyes matched her own. "Why me? You could hire an actress, someone professional." "An actress wouldn't have legitimate childcare credentials. Your background check came back clean, your references are excellent, and you have experience with traumatized children from your work with the foster system." At her surprised look, he added, "I had you investigated after your call. I need to protect my children." The thoroughness both unnerved and reassured her. "The pay, how much are we talking about?" $75,000, half upon agreement, half when the evaluation is successfully completed. The precise amount needed for her mother's treatment, plus a small cushion. Olivia fought to keep her expression neutral despite the surge of hope. It had to be coincidence. Or perhaps Sarah had known more than she let on. And if I'm caught? If someone discovers the arrangement? All legal consequences would fall on me. I'll sign a document confirming this was my idea, that you were coerced through financial need. His gaze held hers. But I won't lie to you. If discovered, this would devastate my children. They've already lost so much. A heavy silence fell between them. Outside, the window. Clouds gathered over the lake, darkening the water. I should tell you, Olivia finally said. I have a daughter. Lauren is 16. She's staying with her grandmother now, but I can't leave her indefinitely. Something unexpected flickered in Ethan's eyes, not annoyance at this complication, but understanding. Bring her, we have more than enough room, and it might actually add credibility to our story. The evaluator would expect your child to be part of this blended family scenario. Olivia stood and walked to the window, buying time to think. The proposition was madness, moving into a stranger's home, pretending to be part of his family, potentially facing legal consequences. Yet the alternative was watching her mother deteriorate without treatment. I need to know one more thing, she said, turning back to face him. Your wife's accident, was it really an accident? The question hung between them like a physical presence. Ethan's expression darkened. The official investigation determined it was. Elizabeth's car went off the cliff road during a storm. His voice remained steady, but something in his eyes shifted. Why do you ask? Because I'd be bringing my daughter into this house, because your in-laws are fighting so hard for custody, because your housekeeper warned me about shadows. Olivia met his gaze directly. If I'm going to risk everything, I need the truth. For a moment, she thought he might dismiss her, the muscle in his jaw working as he considered her demand. Then, his shoulders sagged slightly. The truth is complicated. Elizabeth was troubled in the months before her accident. Secretive, frightened even. The night she died, we argued. She told me she'd discovered something that changed everything. His voice lowered. She promised to explain the next day, but she never came home. A chill ran through Olivia. Do you think someone caused her accident? I don't know. The police found nothing suspicious, but certain things don't add up. Missing pages from her journal. Phone calls she received that no one will claim. A safe deposit box emptied the day before her accident. He ran a hand through his hair. I've been trying to piece it together while protecting the children, but the custody battle has consumed all my resources. Before Olivia could respond, the study door burst open. A small boy with auburn hair and wide blue eyes rushed in, followed closely by Mrs. Peterson. I'm so sorry, Mr. Bally. He slipped away while I was helping Lily with her shoes. It's all right, Ethan said, his demeanor instantly softening as he knelt to the child's level. Alexander, we have a guest. This is Ms. Reed. The boy regarded Olivia with solemn curiosity. Are you going to be our new mommy? The innocent question landed like a physical blow. Ethan's face paled, and Mrs. Peterson gasped softly. Alexander, Ethan began gently, remember what we discussed about Mommy. No one will ever replace her. But the child's attention remained fixed on Olivia. There was something in his gaze, an intensity, a knowing beyond his years, that unsettled her deeply. You have her necklace, Alexander said suddenly, pointing to the antique silver pendant at Olivia's throat. Olivia's hand instinctively rose to touch the family heirloom. This was my grandmother's, she explained softly. The boy shook his head insistently. No, Mommy had one just like it, with the bird inside. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Olivia's pendant was indeed a locket with a small bird engraved on the inner facing. A coincidence, surely. The piece had been in her family for generations. Alexander, Mrs. Peterson intervened, taking the boy's hand. Let's find your brother and sister. It's nearly time for lunch. After they left, Ethan remained silent for a long moment, his expression troubled. "I've never seen Elizabeth wear anything like that," he finally said. "But the children's memories have been inconsistent since the accident." Olivia's unease deepened. Something about this house, this family, this situation felt increasingly wrong. Yet the memory of her mother in the hospital bed, frail and frightened, strengthened her resolve. "I'll do it," she said firmly. "I'll help you convince the evaluator. But understand this, my priority will be protecting my daughter and your children. If at any point I feel they're at risk, our agreement ends." Relief and something like respect crossed Ethan's face. "Those are terms I can accept." He extended his hand again. "We have a deal then." As their hands clasped, a thunderclap shook the windows, and rain began to lash against the glass. Somewhere deeper in the house, a child started to cry. Neither of them could have known that their agreement had just set in motion events that would unearth secrets buried for generations. Secrets that powerful people would kill to protect. 3 days into her stay at Wonder Manor, Olivia woke to the sound of whispers. The grand guest suite, larger than her entire first apartment, was bathed in pre-dawn shadows, the heavy curtains blocking out all but the faintest hint of approaching sunrise. For a moment she lay perfectly still, straining to catch the sounds that had pulled her from sleep. There they were again, small voices just outside her door, accompanied by the softest shuffling of feet. "Should we knock?" A hesitant whisper. She recognized as Lily's. "What if she gets mad?" Alexander's voice, anxious as always. "We have to know." Mason, the most determined of the triplets. "I'm knocking." Olivia slipped out of bed and opened the door before tiny knuckles could make contact with the wood. 3 identical faces gazed up at her, expressions shifting from surprise to guilt to curiosity in the span of seconds. "Good morning," she said gently, kneeling to their level. "It's very early for you 3 to be awake." The children exchanged glances in that peculiar wordless communication unique to multiples. Finally, Mason stepped forward as their apparent spokesperson. "We need to ask you something," he said, his small shoulders squared with purpose. "Something important," Olivia nodded encouragingly. "You can ask me anything." "Are you going to disappear like Mommy?" The question came from Lily, her voice so soft it was nearly inaudible. The directness of the question caught Olivia off guard. Over the past 3 days, she had carefully navigated around the subject of Elizabeth, focusing instead on establishing trust with the children. They had responded with cautious interest, accepting her presence but maintaining an emotional distance. That broke her heart a little. "I'm not going to disappear," she assured them. "I'm here to help your dad and to spend time with you 3. "But for how long?" Mason pressed, his blue eyes searching her face for deception. "Melissa said she was staying too, but then she went away after she and Daddy had a big fight." Olivia blinked in surprise. "Who's Melissa?" "Daddy's friend," Alexander supplied. "She came after Mommy went away. She was nice at first, but then she got really mad when she was looking at Mommy's things." This was the first Olivia had heard of another woman in Ethan's life after Elizabeth. The revelation unsettled her. What else had he omitted from his explanation? "Mrs. Peterson says we shouldn't talk about Melissa," Lily added in a conspiratorial whisper. "She says it makes Daddy sad." Before Olivia could formulate a response, the sound of footsteps in the hallway made the children tense. Mrs. Peterson appeared around the corner, her expression shifting from concern to disapproval at the sight. Care of the triplets huddled at Olivia's door. "There you are," she chided gently. "You know you're not supposed to wander the halls alone, especially before sunrise." She cast an apologetic glance at Olivia. "I'm sorry they disturbed you. They slipped out while I was preparing breakfast." "It's no problem," Olivia assured her. "We were just getting acquainted." Mrs. Peterson's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Come along, children. Let's let Ms. Reed get dressed. Your father wants to speak with her before your art therapy session." As the housekeeper ushered the children away, Alexander looked back at Olivia with that same unsettling intensity he'd shown in the study. "Check the blue book," he whispered, before Mrs. Peterson gently guided him around the corner. 30 minutes later, freshly showered and dressed in simple slacks and a sweater, Olivia made her way to the family dining room. The manor was easier to navigate now, though she still felt like an intruder in its grand spaces. The west wing, where the children's rooms were located, had a warmer atmosphere than the rest of the house, with colorful artwork adorning the walls and toys occasionally left in corners. She found Ethan at the massive oak table, nursing a cup of coffee while reviewing documents spread before him. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and the stubble on his jaw suggested he hadn't slept well. "Good morning," she said, helping herself to coffee from the silver carafe on the sideboard. He looked up, seeming to return from some distant thought. "Good morning, I hope you're settling in." "The children visited me at dawn," she said, taking a seat across from him. "They wanted to know if I was going to disappear like Mommy." Ethan winced. "Their therapist says they're still processing the concept of Elizabeth's absence. The word death frightens them, so we've been using gentler terminology." They also mentioned someone named Melissa, a friend of yours who stayed here briefly. The change in Ethan's demeanor was immediate, a tightening around his eyes, a tensing of his shoulders. Melissa Calloway, she was Elizabeth's college roommate. She came to help after the accident, but decided it wasn't a good fit. The explanation seemed reasonable, yet something in his tone suggested there was more to the story. Olivia decided to press gently. "The children said you had a fight before she left." Ethan set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. "Melissa overstepped certain boundaries. She began going through Elizabeth's personal belongings without permission, asking questions about financial matters that weren't her concern." He met Olivia's gaze directly. "I would have mentioned her, but honestly it was a brief and unpleasant chapter I prefer not to dwell on." Before Olivia could respond, the dining room door swung open to admit James Harris. The attorney looked surprised to see her. "Ms. Reed, good morning. I didn't realize you would be joining us." "James," Ethan nodded. "Ms. Reed has agreed to help with our situation. She moved in yesterday with her daughter, who arrives this weekend." Understanding dawned on the attorney's face, though his expression remained carefully neutral. "I see. Well, I have news about the evaluation. Judge Carroll has scheduled it for next Thursday, sooner than we anticipated." Ethan frowned. "That's barely a week from now. We were told it would be at least 2 weeks." "Robert Wonder's influence at work, I suspect," James replied grimly. "They're pushing to accelerate the process while you're still in what they'll characterize as the acute grief stage." Olivia felt a flicker of resentment at being discussed, as if she weren't present. "Mr. Harris," she interjected, "what exactly will this evaluation entail?" The attorney studied her for a moment, as if assessing her reliability. "Dr. Freeman, the court-appointed psychologist, will observe family interactions, interview each adult separately, and spend time with the children. She's looking for stability, emotional security, and healthy attachment patterns." "And my role specifically?" "You'll need to demonstrate a genuine bond with the children and a coherent narrative about your relationship with Ethan that explains your recent integration into the household." His tone was professional, but tinged with doubt. "We've developed a backstory," Ethan said. "Olivia and I knew each other in college, reconnected recently, and have been quietly seeing each other for several months. Given the delicate nature of introducing someone new into the children's lives after their loss, we've taken things slowly." Olivia nodded. It was the cover story they had agreed upon, though hearing it stated so clinically reminded her of the deception's magnitude. James collected his documents, his expression grave. "I've also received word that the Westbrooks will be attending a charity function here in Harbor Springs this weekend. They've requested to see the children." Ethan's face darkened. "Absolutely not. The current custody arrangement gives them visitation rights," James reminded him gently. "Refusing could harm our position." A tense silence fell over the room. Olivia sensed there was more to the Westbrooks' request than simple grandparental affection. "Fine," Ethan finally conceded. 2 hours, here at the manor, supervised." After James departed, Olivia followed Ethan to the children's art therapy session. The manor's former ballroom had been converted into a bright studio space with easels, clay modeling stations, and a corner filled with musical instruments. Dr. Martinez, the art therapist, greeted them warmly. The children are excited about today's session. We're exploring emotions through color. As the triplets settled at their easels, Olivia observed their distinct approaches. Mason created precise geometric patterns in dark blues and purples. Lily's canvas exploded with chaotic splashes of red and orange. Alexander painted methodical layers of green, completely covering his paper until it was nearly black. Their work often reflects their emotional state, Dr. Martinez explained quietly. Mason seeks control through structure. Lily's expressing the anger she can't verbalize, and Alexander, she hesitated. What about Alexander? Ethan asked, concern edging his voice. He's hiding something, the therapist said, covering it up layer by layer. I've seen this pattern before in children who are protecting a secret they believe is dangerous. Olivia watched the small boy, adding yet another layer of green to his saturated paper. What secret could a 5-year-old possibly feel he needed to protect? Later that afternoon, while Ethan attended a video conference with his company's board, Olivia used the opportunity to explore the Manor's library. The vast room housed thousands of volumes, from rare first editions to contemporary bestsellers. She ran her fingers along the spines, wondering which might be the blue book Alexander had mentioned. Her attention was drawn to a section of shelves containing family photo albums. Most were elegant leather-bound volumes, but one stood out, a simple blue cloth-covered book wedged between larger albums. Remembering Alexander's whispered instruction, she carefully extracted it. The book proved to be not a photo album, but a journal. The inside cover bore the inscription, Elizabeth Wonder, Thoughts and Memories. Olivia hesitated, aware that reading a deceased woman's private journal crossed ethical boundaries, yet Alexander had specifically directed her to it. Why? She opened to a random page, dated approximately 8 months before Elizabeth's accident. Mother and father visited today with their usual agenda, criticize Ethan, undermine our parenting, and remind me of my obligations to the Wonder legacy. What they don't realize is how much I've discovered about that legacy. If they knew I had access to grandfather's private correspondence, they would be terrified. The foundation of their precious empire is built on quicksand and blood. Olivia flipped forward several pages. The safety deposit box is finally arranged. If anything happens to me, the contents will ensure the truth comes to light. EW will see to it. He owes me that much after all these years of secrets. The journal entries became increasingly paranoid and cryptic in the weeks leading up to Elizabeth's accident. The final entry, dated the day before her death, contained just one line. I've told Ethan I know. Tomorrow I show him proof. God help us all when the truth emerges. The sound of the library door opening startled Olivia. She quickly returned the journal to its place as Mrs. Peterson entered. Ms. Reed, Mr. Bally asked me to inform you that his mother-in-law called. She's arriving early, tomorrow instead of this weekend. The housekeeper's voice was tense. Mrs. Wonder can be difficult. Mr. Bally suggested you might want to prepare. After Mrs. Peterson left, Olivia extracted her phone from her pocket and dialed her daughter's number. Lauren answered on the third ring, her voice guarded. Hey, Mom, how's the mysterious job going? It's complicated, Olivia admitted. How's Grandma? The same. The doctors say she needs to start the treatment soon if it's going to help. Lauren's voice cracked slightly. When can I come there? Grandma's nurse said I can't stay with her much longer. This weekend, Olivia promised. I'm sending a car for you Friday afternoon. Lauren, honey, there's something you should know before you arrive. You're not really working as a nanny, are you? Her daughter's perception had always been uncanny. No, Olivia confessed. It's more complicated than that. I'm helping a family through a difficult situation. There are 3 children, triplets, and their father is fighting to keep custody of them. And where do you fit in? Olivia hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I'm pretending to be a family friend who's become close to their father, to help convince a court evaluator that the children have a stable home. The silence on the other end stretched uncomfortably. "So you're lying," Lauren finally said. "For money." The blunt assessment stung, even as Olivia acknowledged its accuracy. "For Grandma's treatment," she corrected gently, "and to help these children stay with their father instead of being taken by grandparents who barely know them." Another pause. "Is he at least cute?" Despite everything, Olivia found herself smiling at the typical teenage question. "That's not relevant to the arrangement." "Which means yes," Lauren retorted, a hint of her usual spirit returning. "Just be careful, Mom. You always want to save everyone, but sometimes that means you don't see the danger until it's too late." The warning echoed in Olivia's mind long after they hung up. Lauren had always been wiser than her years, a child forced to grow up quickly after her father abandoned them when she was 7. The parallel between Lauren and the triplets, children shaped by parental loss, wasn't lost on Olivia. That evening, dinner was a tense affair. Ethan seemed distracted, responding to the children's chatter with absent smiles and automatic nods. The triplets, sensitive to his mood, grew progressively quieter until the only sounds were the clink of silverware against fine china and the occasional rumble of thunder as another storm gathered over the lake. After the children were tucked in for the night, Olivia found Ethan in the conservatory, a glass of whiskey in hand as he stared out at the storm-tossed waters. "Eleanor Wonder arrives at 10 tomorrow," he said without turning. "I should warn you what to expect." Olivia settled into a chair nearby, noticing how the lightning illuminated the angular planes of his face. "Mrs. Peterson mentioned she can be difficult." A humorless laugh escaped him. "Eleanor makes Machiavelli look straightforward. She's built her life around the wonder. A legacy. Protecting it, expanding it, controlling it. Elizabeth was her only child, the vessel for all her ambitions and expectations." He took a sip of whiskey. "She never forgave Elizabeth for choosing me over the man they had selected for her. Who did they want her to marry? Gregory Chambers. Old money, political connections, impeccable pedigree." His voice hardened. "Also controlling, manipulative, and cruel behind closed doors. Elizabeth escaped that engagement by the skin of her teeth." "How did you and Elizabeth meet?" Olivia asked, realizing how little she knew about the woman whose role she was partially assuming. "Northwestern University. I was studying business. On scholarship. She was pursuing art history with her family's reluctant blessing. We kept our relationship secret for nearly a year, knowing her parents would disapprove of me, the scholarship boy from Detroit with no connections." A genuine smile briefly softened his features. Elizabeth was fearless. When we finally told her parents we were engaged, she faced their rage without flinching. "They never accepted you?" "They tolerated me after the triplets were born. Wonder, heirs were too precious to alienate, even if they carried my blood." His expression darkened again. But things changed in the last year. Elizabeth began researching her family history for a book she wanted to write. Whatever she discovered caused a complete rupture with her parents. Olivia thought of the journal entries she'd read earlier. "Did she ever tell you what she found?" Ethan drained his glass. "She was going to. The night before her accident, she told me she'd uncovered something that would change everything, not just for us, but for the entire Wonder Empire. She was frightened, but also determined." He set the empty glass down with controlled precision. "The next day, her car went off the cliff road during a storm much like this one." Lightning flashed again, throwing the room into harsh relief. In that moment of illumination, Olivia saw raw grief and something else in Ethan's eyes, doubt perhaps, or suspicion. "You don't believe it was an accident," she stated quietly. "The official investigation found no evidence of foul play. The key. Roads were slick, visibility poor. Elizabeth wasn't a confident driver in the best conditions." He spoke as if reciting facts from a report. "But no, I don't believe it was an accident. Not after everything else." "What everything else?" Ethan seemed to debate internally before responding. 3 weeks before her accident, our house in Chicago was broken into. Nothing valuable was taken, just Elizabeth's laptop and some research files. The police called it a random burglary, but Elizabeth was convinced it was targeted. Thunder rumbled overhead, closer now. "Then there were the phone calls," he continued. "Hang-ups at all hours. Elizabeth began checking the children's windows, obsessively, insisting they sleep in our room some nights. I thought she was having a breakdown between the book research, the estrangement from her parents, and raising 3 active children. He trailed off, guilt shadowing his features. I should have listened more carefully, should have pushed harder to understand what was frightening her. Olivia considered mentioning the journal but hesitated. She needed to understand more before sharing that discovery. "Has anything unusual happened since I arrived?" she asked instead. Ethan's gaze sharpened. "Why do you ask?" "Just trying to get a complete picture before I meet Eleanor Wonder." He studied her for a long moment. "There was a call yesterday. No one on the line when I answered, but I could hear breathing. And Mrs. Peterson found a side door unlocked this morning, though she's certain she checked it last night." Before Olivia could respond, a child's terrified scream pierced the night, rising above the storm's fury. They both jumped to their feet, rushing toward the sound with pounding hearts. They found Lily thrashing in her bed, caught in the grip of a nightmare. Ethan gathered his daughter into his arms, murmuring reassurances as she slowly woke. The other 2 triplets appeared in the doorway, wide-eyed and frightened. "She had the car dream again," Alexander whispered to Olivia as she ushered him and Mason back to their rooms. "The car dream?" she asked gently, helping them back into their beds. Mason nodded solemnly. "Where Mommy's car goes into the water, and the lady with the silver hair watches from the trees." A chill ran through Olivia. That had nothing to do with the storm. "What lady with silver hair?" "The one who was angry at Mommy," Alexander said, clutching his stuffed bear tightly. "The one who told her to be quiet or else." "Did you tell your dad about this lady?" Olivia asked, struggling to keep her voice calm. Mason shook his head. "We're not supposed to talk about things that aren't real, Dr. Larson said sometimes our brains make up stories to explain sad things." As she tucked the boys in again, Olivia's mind raced. Were these merely the fabrications of traumatized children, as their therapist suggested? Or had the triplets witnessed something the night of Elizabeth's accident, something they had been convinced to dismiss as imagination? Returning to Lily's room, she found the little girl calm now, nestled against her father's chest as he stroked her hair. "She's asking." "For you," Ethan said, surprise evident in his voice. Olivia approached cautiously, sitting on the edge of the bed. Lily reached for her hand with surprising strength. "Don't let the silver lady take you too," she whispered, her eyes already drooping with exhaustion. "I won't," Olivia promised, meeting Ethan's troubled gaze over the child's head. "I'm not going anywhere." As the storm raged outside and Lily drifted back to sleep, Olivia felt herself crossing a threshold. What had begun as a mercenary arrangement was transforming into something more complicated. These wounded children were working their way into her heart, their fearful whispers igniting a protective instinct she couldn't ignore. And somewhere in the darkness surrounding Wonder Manor, she was increasingly convinced, lurked dangers neither she nor Ethan fully understood, dangers connected to a silver-haired woman, their hidden legacy, and secrets worth killing to protect. Eleanor Wonder arrived precisely at 10 the next morning, the sleek black Bentley gliding up the driveway like a funeral procession. From her position at the study window, Olivia watched the chauffeur assist a slender woman from the back seat. Despite being in her mid-60s, Eleanor moved with the rigid posture of someone half her age, her silver hair swept into an immaculate chignon that gleamed in the weak sunlight. "Take a good look," Ethan said quietly, joining Olivia at the window. "That's what ruthless determination wrapped in Chanel looks like." The observation wasn't entirely fair, but as Eleanor approached the house, her expression cold and assessing, Olivia understood Ethan's bitterness. This woman's eyes held no grief, only calculation. "Silver hair," Olivia murmured, remembering the children's description. Ethan glanced at her sharply. What was that? Before she could respond, Mrs. Peterson appeared to announce their visitor's arrival. Ethan squared his shoulders, a general preparing for battle. "Remember," he said in an undertone as they moved toward the foyer, "she's here to evaluate you as much as to see the children. Don't let her provoke you." Eleanor Wonder's gaze swept over Olivia with clinical precision as introductions were made, taking in everything from her simple navy dress to her minimal jewelry. The older woman's handshake was brief and cool. "So you're Ethan's friend," she said, the pause clearly deliberate. "How convenient that you appeared just when the custody evaluation was scheduled." "Mother wonder," Ethan interjected smoothly, using the formal address she preferred. "Olivia and I have known each other for years. Our relationship simply deepened recently." "Indeed," Eleanor's tone conveyed elaborate disbelief. "And where are my grandchildren?" "Finishing their morning lessons with their tutor. They'll join us for lunch." Eleanor surveyed the entryway with obvious disapproval. "This place grows more dreary each time I visit. Elizabeth always said it needed a woman's touch." Her gaze returned to Olivia, challenging. "Though I doubt that's what she had in mind. Perhaps we should move to the sitting room," Olivia suggested, refusing to rise to the bait. "I understand you've traveled from Chicago this morning. You must be tired." A flicker of surprise crossed Eleanor's features at the polite response. "Very well." The next hour unfolded like an elaborate chess match. Eleanor probed with pointed questions about Olivia's background, her relationship with Ethan, her approach to the triplets. Each inquiry carried hidden traps that Olivia carefully navigated, conscious of Ethan's tense presence beside her. "And your daughter, Lauren, is it? How does she feel about this sudden blending of families?" Eleanor asked, sipping her tea, with affected casualness. "Lauren arrives tomorrow," Olivia replied. "She's cautiously optimistic. We've had honest conversations about the adjustment period ahead." "Honest?" Eleanor's eyebrow arched. How refreshing. Honesty was always in short supply in this house. Ethan's hand tightened on the arm of his chair, but his voice remained steady. "The children will be down shortly. I hope we can set aside animosity for their sake." Eleanor's smile was razor-thin. "Of course. I only want what's best for Elizabeth's children." "Our children," Ethan corrected, quietly. The arrival of the triplets shifted the atmosphere immediately. They entered in their usual formation, Mason leading, Alexander hesitant, Lily watching carefully. At the sight of their grandmother, they halted in unison. "Come here, darlings," Eleanor beckoned. "Grandmother has brought presents." The children approached dutifully, accepting her stiff embraces and the elaborately wrapped packages she produced. Olivia observed their body language, the way they angled slightly away from Eleanor, their smiles polite but guarded. Only when they had retreated to the far end of the room with their gifts did Olivia realize Alexander was missing. A small hand tugged at her skirt. Alexander had somehow circled behind the furniture to reach her side unnoticed. "Is she the silver lady?" he whispered urgently, his blue eyes wide with fear. Before Olivia could respond, Eleanor's voice cut across the room. "Alexander, darling, come open your present. It's that telescope you wanted." The boy tensed, pressing closer to Olivia. "I don't want to," he whispered. Eleanor's expression hardened slightly. "Alexander, come here now." Ethan moved to intervene, but Olivia gently touched his arm. "Let me," she murmured, then knelt to Alexander's level. "You don't have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable," she told him quietly. "But your grandmother has brought you a gift. Would you like me to go with you to open it?" Relief flooded the child's face. He nodded, clutching her hand as they crossed to where Eleanor waited, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "You're coddling him," she observed coolly. Elizabeth was too soft with them as well. Children need firm guidance. "They need to feel safe," Olivia countered, keeping her tone conversational despite the anger building inside her. "Safety creates confidence." Eleanor's gaze sharpened. "You speak as if you know my grandchildren well after what? A few days." "Sometimes an outside perspective can be valuable," Olivia replied, helping Alexander unwrap his gift. "For instance, I've noticed how protective they are of each other, how they communicate without words, how they're processing grief in their own ways." Something flickered in Eleanor's eyes, unease perhaps, or grudging respect. Before she could Respond, Mason approached with his opened gift, an expensive model boat. "Thank you, grandmother," he said with careful politeness. "It looks like the one in the picture of grandfather's study." Eleanor stiffened imperceptibly. "What picture?" "The one in Mommy's blue book," Mason replied, "with all the men standing around the desk." A brittle silence fell over the room. Eleanor's composure slipped for just a moment, revealing something hard and frightened beneath the polished surface. "Children," Ethan said quietly, "why don't you take your gifts to the playroom? Mrs. Peterson will help you set them up." After they departed, Eleanor set down her teacup with deliberate precision. "You allow them access to Elizabeth's things?" "They find comfort in memories of their mother," Ethan replied. "Elizabeth's journals contained fanciful notions," Eleanor said carefully. "Conspiracy theories born of postpartum depression that never fully resolved. I advised you to store those writings away from impressionable minds." "You seem very concerned about a child's picture book," Olivia observed. Eleanor's gaze snapped to her. "You know nothing about our family history, Ms. Reed. Nothing about the complex emotional issues my daughter struggled with." "I know more than you think," Olivia said, meeting the older woman's gaze steadily. "I know Elizabeth discovered something. In the weeks before her accident, something about the Wonder legacy that terrified her, something she was planning to reveal." Eleanor paled visibly, though her composure remained intact. "Ethan, I hadn't realized your friend had been so thoroughly briefed on our private matters." "She hasn't been," Ethan said slowly, looking between the two women with dawning comprehension. "Olivia, what are you talking about?" The tension in the room thickened. Olivia realized she had overplayed her hand, revealing knowledge she couldn't easily explain without admitting to reading Elizabeth's journal. Eleanor recovered first, her smile cold. "Your new companion appears to have been snooping, Ethan. How unfortunate. One wonders what else she might have disturbed in your home." Before Ethan could respond, the study door burst open. James Harris stood there, his usually impeccable appearance disheveled, his expression grim. "I came as soon as I could," he said, barely acknowledging Eleanor's presence. "The court date has been moved up again. Judge Carroll has scheduled the custody hearing for Monday morning." "Monday?" Ethan's disbelief was palpable. "That's impossible. The evaluation isn't until Thursday." Robert Wonder filed an emergency petition claiming the children are in imminent danger. He's submitted affidavit suggesting your mental state has deteriorated and you've brought an unstable woman into the home. James glanced apologetically at Olivia. "They're demanding immediate temporary custody pending a full hearing." Eleanor rose smoothly. "I was unaware of Robert's legal strategy, but surely you can understand our concern, Ethan. The children have been through so much trauma already." "You orchestrated this," Ethan said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You arranged your visit to coincide with Robert's petition." "I came to see my grandchildren," Eleanor replied, gathering her designer handbag. "What I found confirms our worst fears. You're involving these children in your delusional theories about Elizabeth's accident, and now you've recruited this woman to assist you." She turned to James. "I assume you'll act in your client's best interest and advise him to cooperate with the court order." "There is no court order yet," James countered, though uncertainty tinged his voice, "and any claims that Ethan is unfit are baseless." "Are they?" Eleanor's gaze swept the room. A man still consumed by grief, refusing professional help, obsessing over conspiracy theories, exposing his children to painful memories and now fabricating a relationship to manipulate the court. "I believe Judge Carroll will see things differently." She moved toward the door. "I'll see myself out. My driver is waiting." After Eleanor departed, a heavy silence fell over the study. James looked between Ethan and Olivia with growing concern. "You two need to get your stories straight before Monday," he said bluntly. "If the judge suspects any deception regarding your relationship, we'll lose everything." "I'll leave you to strategize," Olivia said quietly, moving toward the door. "Wait," Ethan called. "What did you mean about Elizabeth discovering something?" "About her being frightened?" Olivia hesitated, torn between honesty and caution. "I found her journal, the blue book the children mentioned. I shouldn't have read it, but Alexander guided me to it. Elizabeth wrote about uncovering something about the Wonder legacy, something she called quicksand and blood. She mentioned a safety deposit box with evidence. James paled. If such evidence exists, we need to find it before Monday. The next. 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. Lauren arrived Friday evening, her initial wariness giving way to genuine concern as she observed the triplets' attachment to her mother. With adolescent directness, she confronted Ethan while helping. "Him prepare dinner. Are you using my mom to keep your kids?" Olivia overheard her daughter ask. "Yes," Ethan admitted without hesitation. "But not the way you think. I'm not using her emotions or manipulating her. This is a business arrangement, one that benefits us both." Lauren considered this. "The children like her, they don't seem to like their grandmother much. They're perceptive," Ethan replied. "Your mother genuinely cares about their well-being. Eleanor only cares about controlling the Wonder fortune." "And do you care about my mum at all?" Lauren pressed. "Or is she just convenient?" Olivia held her breath, waiting for Ethan's response. "Your mother is remarkable," he said finally. "In different circumstances," he trailed off, then continued more firmly. "But these aren't different circumstances. This is reality. And in reality, I'm still grieving my wife while fighting to keep my children. Your mother is helping us, and I'm helping her with your grandmother's medical expenses. That's the arrangement." Lauren seemed satisfied with his honesty, if not his answer. "Fair enough, but if you hurt her financially or otherwise, you'll regret it." The threat from a 16-year-old might have seemed comical in other circumstances, but Ethan nodded solemnly. "Understood." Saturday morning brought another development. While searching Elizabeth's remaining personal effects stored in the attic, Olivia discovered a key taped inside an old photo album. Unlike a typical house or car key, this one was small and ornate, with no identifying markings. "A safety deposit box," Ethan confirmed when she showed him. "But which bank?" Elizabeth had accounts at 3 different institutions. James arrived that afternoon with worse news. "Robert Wonder's petition includes allegations that you falsified financial records to hide assets from Elizabeth's estate. They're claiming you've been embezzling from the children's trust funds." "That's absurd," Ethan snapped. "I've never touched those funds." "It doesn't matter what's true," James said grimly. "Only what they can make the judge believe on Monday. They've submitted financial statements showing transfers you allegedly authorized." "Forgeries," Ethan said with certainty. "They're framing me." While the men strategized legal countermeasures, Olivia spent time with the children, acutely aware that Monday might be their last day together. During a quiet moment when Mason and Lily were napping after lunch, Alexander tugged her into the playroom's window alcove. "I need to show you something," he whispered, glancing around to ensure they were alone. From his pocket, he produced a small object, a USB drive in the shape of a ladybug. "Where did you get this?" Olivia asked gently. "Mommy gave it to me the day before she went away," Alexander said solemnly. "She said it was a special ladybug that would keep us safe if the bad people came. I was supposed to give it to Daddy, but..." His voice faltered. "Grandmother said Mommy was confused, that there weren't any bad people, just sad thoughts in Mommy's head. She said if I talked about bad people, they might take me away from Daddy." The manipulation was so calculating, so cruel, that for a moment Olivia couldn't speak past her anger. "Alexander, you did the right thing keeping this safe," she finally managed. "May I show it to your dad?" The boy nodded, relief washing over his features. "I knew you weren't like the Silver Lady. Mummy said I'd know who to trust because they'd have a kind heart." That evening, after the children were asleep, Ethan, James, Olivia, and Lauren gathered in the study. The contents of the USB drive were projected onto a large screen, financial records, emails, and photographs dating back nearly 40 years. "My God," James breathed as they scrolled through the evidence. The original Wonder Industries made its fortune smuggling during Prohibition, then laundered the money through legitimate businesses. But this goes beyond that. Payoffs to officials, environmental cover-ups, even evidence suggesting Robert, Wanda was involved in deliberately causing accidents to competitors. Elizabeth found all this in her grandfather's private papers, Ethan said, his voice hollow with realization. She was going to expose it all, not out of vindictiveness, but because she couldn't live with the lies anymore, especially after the children were born. One photograph in particular caught Olivia's attention, a group of men standing around an ornate desk, just as Mason had described. In the background, barely visible, was a boat model identical to the one Eleanor had given Mason. But it was the document beneath the model that made Olivia's heart race. "Zoom in on that paper," she requested. As the image enlarged, James let out a low whistle. "That's a list of payoffs to local officials to cover up toxic dumping in Lake Michigan, directly upriver from predominantly black neighborhoods in Chicago. This scandal would destroy not just the Wanda reputation, but potentially result in criminal charges for the current board members, including Robert. And Eleanor was involved," Olivia noted, pointing to a signature on one of the memos. "She's been handling the cover-up for decades." "The Silver Lady," Lauren murmured. "The children saw her the night of Elizabeth's accident, didn't they?" Ethan's face had gone ashen. "Eleanor told me she was in Chicago that night. She claimed she spoke to Elizabeth by phone hours before the accident, that Elizabeth was distraught, talking about ending it all." She was setting up a suicide narrative, James realized, but if the children saw her near the accident site, then she either caused the accident or witnessed it and did nothing to help, Olivia finished. The pieces were falling into place with terrible clarity. Eleanor had discovered Elizabeth's investigation, realized her daughter planned to expose decades of family crimes, and taken desperate action to silence her. Afterward, she had manipulated the traumatized children into believing their memories were mere nightmares, while systematically working to gain custody of them and control of the evidence they might possess. "We have enough here to stop the custody petition," James said, already making notes. "But pursuing criminal charges for Elizabeth's accident would be much harder without direct evidence." The safety deposit box, Olivia remembered suddenly. Elizabeth wrote that she had arranged for the contents to ensure the truth comes to light. She mentioned someone with the initials EW who would see to it. "EW?" Ethan frowned. "The only EW I know besides Elizabeth herself is Edward Winters, her former art history professor. They remained close over the years." A quick search confirmed that Edward Winters maintained a residence in Harbor Springs, less than 20 minutes from Wonder Manor. Despite the late hour, they decided this couldn't wait until morning. Professor Winters, a dignified man in his 70s, received them with initial confusion that quickly gave way to understanding when Ethan explained their purpose. "I've been waiting for someone to come," he admitted, leading them into his cluttered study. "Elizabeth entrusted me with the key to her safety deposit box at Harbor Springs National Bank, with instructions to wait 1 year after her accident before revealing its existence." He removed an envelope from his desk drawer. Inside is a letter to be opened only in the presence of law enforcement, detailing her fears and suspicions. "Why wait a year?" Lauren asked. "She feared for the children," Professor Winters explained gently. "She believed that if she died under suspicious circumstances and the evidence was immediately revealed, the resulting scandal and investigation might traumatize the triplets further. She wanted to give them time to stabilize first." Monday morning dawned clear and cold. Olivia stood before the mirror in her guest room, adjusting the conservative blue dress she had chosen for court. The woman who stared back at her seemed different from the desperate mother who had arrived at Wonder Manor just over a week ago. Her eyes held a certainty, a purpose that transcended financial need. A soft knock at the door preceded Ethan's entrance. He too was formally dressed, his expression solemn. "The detective just called," he said quietly. "They've arrested Eleanor and Robert based on the evidence from the safety deposit box." Elizabeth left a video statement detailing the threats Eleanor made against her and the children if she went public with what she'd discovered. Tears stung Olivia's eyes. Tears for a woman she had never met, but whose courage had protected her children even beyond her absence. So the custody hearing? Cancelled. James is filing paperwork to dismiss the case permanently. Ethan's voice roughened with emotion. It's over. They can't hurt the children anymore. Relief washed through Olivia, followed immediately by the realization that her job was finished. Her purpose at Wonder Manor fulfilled. I should start packing then. Lauren and I can be out by this afternoon. Ethan stepped closer, his gaze intent. What if you didn't leave? What do you mean? This arrangement between us, it started as a business transaction, but it's become something more, hasn't it? He gestured toward the door, beyond which the sounds of children's laughter mingled with Lauren's voice as she helped them prepare for breakfast. They've bonded, all of them, and we... He trailed off, seemingly at a loss for words. We what? Olivia prompted softly. We make sense together, he finally said. Not as a pretense for court, not as a financial arrangement, but as two people who understand loss and sacrifice and the fierce need to protect those we love. He took her hand, his touch tentative. I'm not suggesting some fairy tale romance. I'm suggesting we give this, whatever it is between us, a chance to develop naturally. Stay, not as an employee or a pretend partner, but as yourself. Let's see where this leads. Olivia thought of her mother, now receiving the treatment she needed, and of Lauren, who had formed an unexpected big sister bond with the triplets. She thought of Alexander's trust, Mason's gradual relaxation around her, Lily's nightmares, that only she could soothe. It won't be easy, she cautioned. The children still need time to heal. Lauren is used to having me all to herself, and you... She met his gaze directly. You're still grieving Elizabeth. I'll always love her, Ethan acknowledged. She was my first love, the mother of my children, a remarkable woman who ultimately gave her life to protect our family. But Elizabeth herself taught me that love isn't finite. It expands to encompass new connections, new possibilities. Outside, the first rays of sunlight broke through the morning mist, illuminating the lake waters that had claimed Elizabeth's life, and now, perhaps, offered a new beginning. Yes, Olivia said simply. We'll stay. That evening, as sunset painted, the western sky in shades of gold and crimson, the newly formed family gathered on the manor's terrace. The triplets chased fireflies across the lawn, while Lauren taught them a clapping game she had learned in elementary school. Nearby, Ethan and Olivia sat side by side, not touching but close enough to feel the warmth between them. Alexander asked if you're going to be their new mommy, Ethan said quietly. Olivia watched the children, her heart full. What did you tell him? That no one will ever replace Elizabeth, but that families can grow and change. That love comes in many forms, and all of them are valuable. She nodded, appreciating his honesty. A wise answer. He thought so too. Then he said something. That Ethan's voice caught slightly. He said he thinks his mommy sent you to us, that she knew you had a kind heart. Tears blurred Olivia's vision as she recalled Alexander's similar words to her. Perhaps it was merely a child's way of making sense of loss and new connections. Or perhaps, as the golden light caught her grandmother's silver pendant, so eerily similar to one Elizabeth had owned, there were mysteries in this world beyond rational explanation. What mattered now was not the shadows of the past, but the light of the present, the laughter of children healing from trauma, the promise of new beginnings, the knowledge that family could be both inherited and chosen. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared above Lake Michigan, Olivia felt a sense of homecoming deeper than any she had known before. Not because of Wonder Manor's grandeur or security, but because here, amid the remnants of tragedy, she had found unexpected truth, that sometimes the most broken paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. In the distance, the triplets' laughter rang out, no longer shadowed by fear but bright with possibility. Beside her, Ethan reached for her hand, his touch tentative but hopeful. As their fingers intertwined, Olivia knew that while they could never erase the past, they could build a future where healing and love transformed even the deepest wounds into foundations for something beautiful. "Welcome home," Ethan whispered, his voice carrying on the gentle evening breeze. And for the first time in years, Olivia truly was. Dear listeners, We hope you've been moved by the journey of Olivia and Ethan's unexpected connection amidst shadows and healing. For more emotionally captivating stories that explore the complex tapestry of human relationships, we've created a special playlist you can find by clicking to your left. If this tale of family, redemption, and second chances touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day, we bring you unique narratives that delve into life's most profound challenges and triumphs. We can't wait to see you in the comments section, sharing your thoughts on this story of how sometimes the family we need finds us when we least expect it.